Welcome back, everyone. For your do now, I wanted you to explain to me why population grew so rapidly in the last 150 years or so. Now, to respond to this properly, you need to talk a lot about development, how countries develop, how they get access to modern healthcare and modern education, access to modern systems of transportation so they can deliver food and resources to people. Yesterday, we used this graph as a way to explain it. We said that stage one is when people have very little technology. As a result, they tend to have lots of kids, um, but a lot of kids die in childbirth or in young age. As a result, you don't have a very big population. Right? The world is very, very deadly. There's no medicine. There's no safety options at work. There's not a lot of food. People are starving. Right? It's a very deadly world to be in stage one. So your population is very low. But as we get into stage two and stage three, people start getting more access to medicine, better food, safer jobs, more education. All these things lead to a drop in the death rate. I mean, more and more people survive. But culture hasn't changed. People keep having lots of babies because that's what they used to do. And this is where your population starts to explode and starts to increase very rapidly. It's not until stage three that your birth rates start to drop. This is usually coincides with female education, women getting more education, more opportunities. They tend to choose to have less kids. Access to birth control all leads to a drop in birth rates, which means your population starts to level off in stage four. And then stage five, where some countries are starting to experience, is that people keep choosing to have less and less kids to the point where your population decreases. So, the more access to education, to advanced technology, to healthier foods, to better jobs, women's rights, all this is going to lead to a decrease in birth rates. We're going to start focusing in on specifically Southeast Asia today. Um, in this area, the world has always had a high population. Compared to the global population, this area has always been highly populated. It has what we call a high carrying capacity, meaning it has a lot of resources, water and food, as well as access to um, different resources, lumber, things like that. It's always just been a great place for humans to survive, right? Back even with that stage one where you have that high death rate, this was a good place for humans to survive. So they just had a lot of people. And if you start with a lot of people, well, your population boom is going to be even bigger. Culturally, Southeast Asia, like many cultures, has always pushed families to try to have more kids. That's been a big aspect of their culture, is that you're expected to have lots of kids, which ties into the good geography and culture and climate that leads to um, higher population. What also happened is this area of the world developed really fast, whereas like Europe, North America, our development took like 100 years. Southeast Asia is doing it in like 30 to 50. So their transition to stage two was very fast. And as a result, they have a much bigger population boom than you saw anywhere else because they dropped their death rate extremely quickly, but birth rates stayed high for a very long time, which results in population doubling, tripling within a few decades. So if we're looking at this graph again, well, their death rates, you can see, are dropping very quickly, much faster than traditional. But at the same time, their birth rate stayed up longer. The end result is the population's increasing much faster. Today, our goal is to focus in a little bit on India, the biggest country in this region by land and by population. India is a major culture within this region, being the biggest, most influential country. Their culture has spread around the world through immigration, the Hindu religion, um, as well as a lot of the different cultural beliefs in language and um, holidays and music and all that is very widespread. India has become the most populated country in the world just in the past couple of years, 3.8, 3.4 billion people. passed China last year as to be the number one most populated country in the world. A lot of this is due to China having a very strict one-child policy. So China put in very strict rules about how many kids you could have, which caused their population to not decline immediately, but very quickly come under control. India has none of those rules, so their population has continued to grow where China has leveled off. If we look at it on a graph, you can see we're here, right where they cross. We're roughly right there. India is going to continue to grow where China is already going to start leveling off and dropping in the next couple decades. Here's some pictures of India. Most of their cities are extremely overcrowded. Lots of people. Rarely is there enough space or enough resources for everyone. Definitely not to an American. Americans have a lot of value on our personal space that this is uncomfortable for a lot of Americans. Here we see a water park. You can see how incredibly crowded it is. Just the main streets near the capital in New Delhi. And I've shown you this picture before. This is the Taj Mahal, the most famous landmark in India, very famous historical and cultural center, famous around the world. But this is like the nice view of it. This is a different view of the Taj Mahal. Just outside its walls, you have a giant slum. So India is developing very rapidly, but not everyone's getting access to this technology at the same time. So there's lots of people, hundreds of millions of people in India that are living in slums and living in poverty. There are millions in extreme poverty. We're talking like $1 a day. Right? When you have this many people, it's hard to get food, to get jobs, to get resources for everyone. So India is really struggling with that. We'll watch a video as a class. If you want to pause this video and watch. So our goal today is to read a little bit more about India's population growth, try to understand the cause and effect. So we're going to draw a cause and effect diagram like I am up on the board. Your goal is to explain 3 reasons why India's population has grown so rapidly, but also explain its impact on the country. Because it had this big population growth, what does that mean for people in India today? Remember, explaining means to teach me in your own words and give examples. These are not couple word responses. These might be 2 or 3 sentences long.